waiting for Brianna's screen to come up.
Oh. Good morning.
So first things first, I want to kind of go over who each person is, because these are a lot of beautiful faces that you may or may not have seen if you haven't tuned in to our previous Empowered Education presentations. So first things first, we have Irene Avina, which is one of our therapists here at the Turning Point Rape Crisis Center. And then we have Leah, who is our volunteer coordinator here at the Turning Point. And then we also have Brianna, who is our case manager here at the Turning Point. So I invited all of these beautiful women to have this conversation about how we advocates, how can we educate people in our lives about social injustice. And so before we get started with our panel, I'm just going to do some quick housekeeping and then we'll get started. So, Everything moves a little bit slower whenever you're sharing your screen. But okay, so this is our presentation, It Takes Unity. It's a bystander's guide on being empowered and educated, because once we're educated about the problem, we can be the change to fix it and support survivors along the way. So here at the Turning Point, we have a 24-hour crisis hotline. The number is 1-800-886-7273. And in our services, we offer counseling, which offers free counseling for survivors and their friends and family members. And then next, we offer advocacy, which is where we go into the hospital and support survivors during their SANE exam, which is a sexual assault nurse examination. We provide them with resources and support and get them set up with counseling services if they want to at that time, and overall just support the survivor during that exam. And then lastly is this, education, where we go into the community in different online platforms and spread awareness about sexual violence and its roots and causes. So our mission is to highlight the impact of sexual violence on individuals and our community through education programs that foster hope, encourage change, and prevent sexual violence. Join us in the fight against sexual violence. The Turning Point is committed to reducing the prevalence of sexual violence in our community. We firmly believe that for this change to occur, each person has a responsibility and must do their part to prevent sexual violence. So, with that being said, let's talk about how we as advocates, spread awareness about sexual violence. So, let's just quickly go over what you do and why you do it. So let's start with you, Irene. What do you do and why do you do it?
Yes, so I am a therapist here at the Turning Point. And so, yeah, I'm a therapist, but I also am a social worker. And that's really that's my passion, is social work. And part of doing social work is serving others. And so I specifically, was very interested in working with populations regarding like trauma. And so that's really what I do. And I work with specifically sexual trauma survivors. And so that's what I do. Why I do it, because it's something that I feel is important, getting access to mental health care services, and being able to provide that, and listen to these survivors' stories and learn about ways to help them. And it's really just wanting to help and wanting to serve, and finding ways to do that through therapy. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so we'll knock it over to you, Leah, next. So what do you do and why do you do it? What is the passion behind what you do?
I am the new volunteer coordinator. I've been here for about a week. So while I'm still learning everything, the reason why I got involved in this is it's always been a passion of mine, sexual violence and ending it. And so I've always been involved with volunteers. I love getting volunteers just in our door and learning about who we are. So again, it's kind of like a domino effect, where once they learn and they are advocates, then they can spread the word and end up ending sexual violence. So that's kind of what I do and why I do it. Kind of
all
combined
tied into one.
Yeah, so that's short and sweet what I do.
Yeah. And so Brianna, close us out. What do you do and why do you do it?
Yeah, so I apologize. Advocacy. We have a hospital case, so needed some information. But I am our case manager and our legal advocate. And so I get to help survivors and support survivors and kind of get them started in that healing process. And then I also get to walk side by side with them in the criminal justice process as well. And why am I passionate? There's a lot of reasons why. It impacts so many people. And I just really love helping others through some of their most difficult times. But I also love watching people grow and kind of that resilience factor kick in. So I love it.
Yeah. And so I'll quickly, if you've tuned in any education presentation before, you know that I'm immensely passionate about this work. But I think that it's so important to talk about the uncomfortable stuff and bring light to the uncomfortable things. And once we're educated about these things, we can change the world that we live in. We can be the change that we want to see. And so that's something that I'm so passionate about. And that's why I do it. And so, what are some strategies in advocating for social justice and talking with family members, and not even just in the context of sexual violence, but in all states of injustice? What are some strategies you found to be effective and ineffective in your advocacy? For me, I can start. Something very effective, I think, is whenever we meet people where they are in their journey, whether it's talking about issues with like social issues or sexual violence, all those things. Whenever you meet someone where they are, and then you can kind of educate them from that point. But some things that are ineffective is just telling people that they're wrong, which I would really just love to do sometimes. And it just would make you feel so happy to just be like, you know what, you're wrong. And here are the statistics for why you're wrong. But we can't do that. We have to just meet them where they're at. And so that's my strategy. So we can do the same order, go in like a little circle about strategies, effective and ineffective in your advocacy walk.
So is that me? Okay, cool. Yeah. So kind of going off of what you were saying, just like really knowing your limits, knowing, what you can emotionally take on when talking about whatever it is that you're advocating for. Oftentimes, if you're an advocate, if you're fighting for social justice, in some way you've been personally impacted by that. And it's that personal personal impact that really kind of will help motivate and help connect you to those people that you want to be able to connect with. But it can be overwhelming sometimes, especially when you're having a conversation where maybe you don't meet eye to eye. And so really knowing where your emotional capacity is to even kind of hear that information or have a conversation like that, and being like, you know what, let me just take a step back and take a breather. Because really, when you start to get into the emotions, it can start to feel more led by those emotions than anything on a kind of a rational conversation. The clarity is lost through that emotion. And though it can be a great way to help motivate, the goal can just end up being lost in all of that. So really knowing your limits, being able to listening is so important. It's so important. Like really just if someone is like coming to you and wanting to talk about whatever's hurt that they've gone through, take it as an opportunity to really hone in on those active listening skills. And also doing your own research is so important. Taking time to just learn more about some of the things, conversations that you want to have that you want to talk about. When you're kind of just going off of word what people have been saying on social media. It's really easy, again, to get lost in that emotional base of that, and not have any of the rationale, because it is very logical. You said, there are things that are, you can show them the statistics of something, and that is absolutely right, but they may not be at a place to listen and recognizing they've gone past their limit, and this is not going to this isn't going to be productive, because at the end of the day, you've got a certain amount of energy, and you have to really be careful with, what you do with that energy and how you utilize that. So yeah, that's something that I think I've personally have had to kind of go through and realize. But yeah, those I guess would be my strategies.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Irene.
How do you top that?
I'm like, what the ass?
No, I'm sorry, guys.
I just be like what Irene said, like times 20. I mean, honestly, when it comes to just like strategies, I think my biggest one is literally just educating and like continuing to learn. And I mean, honestly, I feel like conversations about social justice literally comes up every day, just in like with the world that we're in, just casually comes up in conversations now. And so being able to, again, like Irene said, kind of take a step back, not get too emotional, but then just being able to educate them and almost planting a seed. Because even if they're not listening now, there is still a seed that can be planted where one day it might just click. And so continuously like learning, researching, and being able to use that research to share with people, I think is probably one of the most important aspects. But yeah, again, Irene, just like snaps to you. That was on point. Like, so good. Man, I felt that in my soul.
That came from a place of experience.
I think, and that's why I've chosen all of these people, because I feel like we all feel these things within our soul, and that it's really important to, okay, fire truck. But it's really important to talk about these things and talk about this journey in a really an authentic way, because so often people ask us, they're like, oh, how do you do this work? How do you, we literally put on our suit of armor every day and battle for survivors and battle for justice and battle for healing. And so being able to talk about how we go through that, what it looks like for us and how it affects us on a personal level, is something that I think that a lot of people need to know and need to see. But Brianna, what does it look like? What are some strategies you found effective or ineffective?
So, I mean, the two of you just hit that like perfectly. But I think another strategy that I often overlook as a strategy of advocacy is self-care, and making sure that like I'm good, and kind of what you said, Irene, just making sure emotionally where you're at and kind of checking where you're at, but also knowing your audience, and you have to know their boundaries and kind of take feelers out. I agree. It's important to take your emotion out of it a little bit, but I also think if it's in a hard fight, it's okay to get a little passionate. But it still needs to come from a loving place. Because if you try to come at somebody just, you're wrong, no matter how much we may believe that and know that, that's not necessarily the most effective way of getting through to people. And like Leah said, you want to be able to at least plant a seed. And if you're just demeaning someone, that's probably not the best way to go about that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that touches on how receptive they'll be to the information, because whether you're right or wrong with the information, you could be 110% right, but in your delivery kind of decides and dictates how that person's going to receive that information and how they're going to proceed with that information. So what are some challenges that you've faced, like being an advocate? What are some challenges you faced, and what techniques did you use to overcome them? For me, I think that the biggest challenge that I faced was understanding that there are people who will stay where they're at. willingly. No matter what information, no matter what knowledge they have, they will stay where they are because that's where they want to be. And it's not my responsibility to continue to try and keep like chipping at that stone, because underneath that stone is a brick, and where that brick is, there's some cement, and it's just like, that's so much energy to exude, and then I would be burnt out and I would be exhausted because I'm focusing all this energy on people who don't want to change, and they don't want that knowledge, and they don't want that information. And so my technique to overcome that was really just telling myself, like, that's not my responsibility, and it's not on me to change how somebody wants to see the world. I can do the best I can, but I cannot make them change.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Kind of, you know, piggybacking off of what you're saying and what Bria just mentioned, self-care, you know, and burnout, it can, I feel like that burnout is definitely something that is, happens a lot for a lot of advocates, a lot of allies. It's just, you know, when you care about something so much, and seeing just how much of an uphill battle it can be really overwhelming. Just seeing the grief and feeling that, and being in certain places where you don't feel like you can, you know, completely 100% show up because of that. You know, really, again, like taking the time to take care of yourself, whether that be talking to a friend that you trust, and that sees you. Therapy is another really big one. Therapy is very big. Having just somebody that you can talk to, unbiased, and who's there to kind of just hear you and listen to you, outside of your loved ones, is so important. Yeah, and just, you know, knowing when to stop taking in the news or the social media too. Just those are limits, really, and trying to find, and this can be difficult, but gratitudes, ways that things that you're, you know, positives in all of the negatives, because it's so important to remember, you know, the things that inspire you, the resilience that is still there. You just have to focus on it, and you have to remember that's what we're working towards. And again, it can really get lost in everything that goes on. But yeah, doing those things, I think, can really help with the burnout that is, yeah, very, very much there.
Yes. Okay. So Leah.
Yeah. Can you re-say the question exactly? Because I'm over here just like absorbing everything Irene's saying almost. So can you just restate the question?
It's strategies that you found effective, or no, sorry, that was the last one. Challenges that you faced in advocacy and how you work to overcome them.
So I'm just going to give one example. Literally, I was like, social media can be such a great tool, but it could also be what causes burnout. Like, I know that there are days that I read something and man, I literally just have to turn off my phone and get away from it, because genuinely it can be so triggering. It can be so just like, I can't believe people actually think this way sometimes. So again, I think that's just like, social media can be such a great tool. Like doing this right now is such a great thing. Then again, it could also be something that is daunting and really hard to like, yeah. And so to overcome it, genuinely, like there are days where I just have to be off of social media. I like just need to focus on like me, my husband, my dogs, like just honestly dogs, like pets, we all know like never get. So that's definitely like the way I overcome things. And also like, again, talking to friends, and just kind of using your resources, whether it's a therapist, a friend, a family member. Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, tossing it on over.
I think there are a lot of challenges, and I think they all kind of lead into both what you said, Danielle, about like just accepting the fact that some people will stay where they're at, and that energy that you probably expending on them is also going to lean more towards compassion fatigue and burnout. And I think to me, again, that goes back to self-care. And it doesn't necessarily have to be like by yourself. You know, there's like community self-care and that kind of stuff. So like Irene was saying, talking to a friend or talking to other people who feel the same way, and not, you know, that will support you through it all and kind of help you recharge yourself, and also tell you that, and I think it's important, I tend to forget this often, but it's okay to be tired, and it's okay to take a step back for a minute and then come back recharged to continue your fight, to continue your passions. And I think just like further educating yourself and just continuing to remind yourself as to why you started and why this is important. And also for myself, this may not be for everybody, but remembering that it's bigger than me, it's bigger than just one agency, really helps me continue to kind of like overcome those struggles and those challenges, because it's a societal thing, it's a cultural thing, and so it's just kind of deeply ingrained in a lot of people. And so you kind of have to keep yourself, I don't remember who said it, but they basically said that self-care is an act of political warfare. It's true, it's an act of resiliency, and if you continue to take care of yourself, you'll be able to continue taking care of problems. Continue your fight, basically.
Yeah, I love that. So next we're just going to kind of talk about like results of being an advocate. And so this can be in personal and in work situations, but I am going to go with a personal one. I think that it's so important to share your beliefs and facts about social issues with the people that you love the most, because a lot of times even the people we love the most can be uneducated about these things. And so with my husband, I would always talk to him about different things revolving around my job, or even different social issues such as the color of my skin. And of course, being married to me, he's fully aware of the different things that I face that he doesn't have to face based off of the color of his skin. But it is incredible to see what an advocate he has become off of just like me giving him knowledge and information, and then him filling his toolbox on his own, and then going out and advocating for social justice as well, and being like a little warrior of like, this isn't right what you're saying, where did you get this information, can you back it up, if you can't, why, and if you can't back it up, if you don't know why, then why do you believe that way? And then having them really confront their inner biases and their inner demons, and having the uncomfortable conversation. And I think that that's something that's so important, because as a POC, oftentimes we feel like we have to advocate for ourselves when that isn't necessarily our job. It's not our job to have to tell people to treat us right. It's other people's job to realize that they need to treat us better. And that's something that I think often gets so like tossed aside and not really thought about. And that's something that I thought was just really like a great result, was like having my husband go and talk to people about their biases and their ideas, and having full-blown educational conversations, and being able to have people turn around and be like, wow, I didn't know all of this, I'm going to read into this more, or you're right, and like all these different things, and doing that work for a better world for me and our future kids to live in.
Yeah, so kind of in a similar sense, maybe not so personal, but like using social media, I think is one of the fastest ways that you can kind of see results. I guess the idea of results is where, you know, just sharing information, being able to share resources, and having another person connect with you, getting a message saying, hey, like, I didn't know about this, or wow, like this is new information to me. And then kind of just being able to see them share that with others on their story, or whatever it is, whatever platform that they're using. So kind of just seeing that small domino effect through social media, utilizing that. I think, I guess, would be an example of seeing kind of results. Yeah, so using social media.
I like that. I like what you said about using social media and seeing, the domino effect that it causes. Because, when we look back in the past month or so of, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and that entire movement that was re-sparked and re-amplified with his death, something that I looked at a lot with social media was who is speaking and who isn't, who's silent in these times, who's using their voice and who isn't. And I'm going to be honest, I was like unfollowing people who are mighty silent about such serious issues. And if we're silent, if you sign on to any of my education presentations, you hear that silence is violence, and also what you permit, you promote. And so if you are not speaking up in times of injustice, then you are saying that behavior is okay. And honestly, on social media, you don't have to subscribe to people who, subscribe to these negative ideas and connotations that they don't have. It's not their responsibility or their place to speak about things, when it's all of our responsibility to speak about these things, because these are human rights. But yeah, so I'll toss it off to you, Leah. Sorry.
Man. Okay. So like just talking about results. So like we talked about we've already talked about a wide range, like social media. We talked about people surrounding us when they're involved in like being around us and they're like, learning. I'm gonna kind of switch it and just kind of be like result wise. Just seeing individuals that we work with, whether it be like so my previous place was adults with disabilities. So seeing them, one problem with them was they couldn't get employed. Like it was hard to get them employed. And so seeing corporate companies break those barriers and start hiring individuals with disabilities and changing the thought process on being like, oh, well, these individuals can't. Well, but they can. They can do a lot of things. They're just like us. They are just wired differently. So just like changing the mold and like, which is always good to see, like if we're just talking results. So
yeah, that's awesome. I love that. One of my first jobs, we had a special needs employee who worked with us, and he came in one day a week, and he would just like go in and he'd stock stuff, and it was just such an incredible thing that he would just come get dropped off, and he would like work, and he was so sweet. And I think that it's so important to break those molds and stand up for what you believe in. And so that's awesome that the corporate world was doing something to change such a big problem. But tossing it off to you, Brianna. Everybody switched a little bit on my screen when y'all like went off.
Yeah, mine too. I was like, oh, everyone's in a different position. So there's a lot of results. I think I'm gonna go in general. I really love seeing the growth in people that like you're educating and having conversations with, and like their eyes kind of like things just kind of clicking, like just about like injustices and inequality and certain issues. But then also I really love, I believe, a very blessed and special position. I get to see a lot of our clients, after being sexually assaulted. I get to see them from the beginning of their journey to the end of their journey, and seeing that growth is really beautiful. And I just really like it. I like seeing growth and healing.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to kind of meditate on this part for a bit more and just talk more about what it looks like advocating, and ways that we've seen like our advocating for things work and create change and create an impact, and also on educating family members even about social justice, revolving around the Black Lives Matter movement, and just kind of talking about like the isms, so like sexism, racism, ableism, classism, elitism, having these conversations with family members. What does that look like for you? What does it look like to advocate to people in your life about this? So going past just like workplace advocacy, but like, what does it look like to advocate, after the normal 9 to 5? we can toss it to anybody. This is open.
Okay.
Oh, okay, this is open.
I was like, are we going in order?
Yeah. So after, what does it look like to advocate after 9 to 5? I think we've kind of hit on this a little bit, really kind of exploring your own trauma, your own hurts, taking care of yourself, and really recognizing wherever those places come from. There's, like I said, that, a lot of people come into this because they've been personally impacted. And when they've been personally impacted, that means that there are some wounds there that can really, it is a place where you can find meaning and motivation to advocate for others, but it can sometimes get in the way of wanting to have those hard conversations with the people that you care most about, and oftentimes maybe where some resentment or some hurt kind of originates from. So really being able to explore that part of yourself, having those, first and foremost, having those uncomfortable conversations with yourself before having it with anybody else is really important. And doing that, again, like with the therapist, is really important. Having those conversations with the therapist, someone who's completely outside of all of that, of your loved ones, to be able to be prepared and ready to have those conversations with the people that you care about most, in a way that you feel is most productive. So I think I guess that's my therapist answer.
Like, okay, I'll go. So like past the 9 to 5, I mean, again, I think it just comes down to having uncomfortable conversations. And I think being in this field and just kind of working, I almost feel like family members and friends, they want to know what you think. So at least like ever since I've been involved in the nonprofit world, it's always been when they see something on the news, the first person they call is me. And they want to know what I think. They want to know just my educational experience, like what do I think it's right? Do I think it's wrong? And sometimes it can lead to very uncomfortable conversations. I mean, like yesterday, I was having lunch with my in-laws family, and one of the first things they asked, they were talking about a song. And they basically asked like how I felt about it and how, just in like, how I feel. And it was kind of one of those things where I always feel the need to answer back with a question. Sometimes like I want to like almost gauge like where they're at, just meeting them in the middle. And so I'll ask a question just like, oh, well, what about like, and a lot of it has to do with like, oh, well, a girl's singing this way and that's inappropriate. And I was like, well, but there's a million other songs where a guy's singing that way and I've never heard you say anything before. So like, so like kind of getting in their head where it's like, this has always been a part of our culture, but now it's just changing. And it's almost like, they're like, whoa, I didn't think about it that way. And I was like, yeah, there's just a million things so it's almost like it could be uncomfortable, but man, when that light bulb goes on, guys, it feels so good.
Yes.
Yes.
I love that. Piggying back off of that, I love whenever, having those conversations about sexism and being like, oh, well, she was wearing this and this, that, and the other. And I'm that person who will ask you a really uncomfortable question, because based off of your answer, you have to kind of either consult a demon inside of yourself or realize that what you're saying is completely just, astronomical. But like somebody saying, well, she shouldn't have been wearing this. And like, so if a 4-year-old is sexually assaulted and they're in shorts and a tank top, did they deserve it? It's like, well, no. So then it's like, okay, so where's the difference here? You have a 18-year-old in shorts and a tank top. We live in Texas where it is 100 degrees with humidity. We're all sweating bullets by the time we walk from the building to the car. And yet, does sexual violence still happen in places where people are covered from head to toe? Yes. So then I don't think that it's the clothes that impact whether or not somebody gets sexually assaulted. And then they're left to deal with those feelings and confront their inner biases within themselves. And so I think that that's always great too. It's just being like, so do you believe this? And they're like, well, no. So I'm like, so then you don't necessarily believe what you just said either.
A reality check.
For sure. We love a good reality check.
Yeah. I think just having those uncomfortable conversations, but also sharing your own experiences of like, yes, what you've witnessed, what you have experienced, but also the experience like within of kind of like Irene, you were saying, kind of checking yourself and confronting those inner biases and conflicts, but also sharing that with others, like especially in like your family and your loved ones. I think that's really helpful because it's, again, it's not like attacking you. It's, hey, I understand, I've been there, but X, Y, and Z is where you're laying wrong here. And so I think just having those uncomfortable conversations, but still in a respectful manner. And as uncomfy as it is for us as advocates, also being willing to listen to their side of things, to open up the table a little bit more, to kind of free your own voice a little bit more. But I think social media is a great way of going about that as well, because it's not always one-to-one conversation.
Yes. Okay. Irene, do you have any other thoughts?
So yeah, when everybody was talking, just kind of, and I don't know if you said, just really kind of recognizing the influence that you have over others, that you do have, acknowledging that you do have influence. I think that that's something that a lot of people can downplay, just because, someone else has influence, but you also have influence, and, you have people that care about you, who love you. We're all professionals in this in some way, working towards social justice. So that means something, and recognizing that you do have power in that position and in what we're doing. So there is a way that you can put in work.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. I think that especially with our work and what we do whenever it's like our literal 9 to 5 is advocating and speaking justice, is like we do have an extra leg to stand on when advocating for things, and when we are bringing awareness to problems and situations that a lot of people can turn a blind eye to if they want to. We don't have that luxury because we work in it. And so then being like, oh, well, this situation happens, it happens every day. You just have the luxury of not getting to see it and the privilege of not having to acknowledge it. And so many times with social injustice, a lot of it is based in privilege of not having to deal with the problem themselves, not having to see the problem, and not having to acknowledge the problem. And then when we live in that privilege, then it makes it harder for the people who need help and need advocating for, because we want to sit in comfortability instead of, fighting the good fight. And so that's something that I love that we all get to do, is fight the good fight and have those uncomfy conversations and educate the public, because the world can be a better place because we do have influence, and we can impact and educate others to make a greater impact and education on others. It's a domino effect of like a better world. And so how are some ways that we all avoid burnout? I'm the worst with this, so I'll go last. I think we all have had our different struggles and pulls of burnout. And I think that this one is very important to talk about because burnout is so prevalent in fighting the good fight. So whoever wants to go first, go ahead. I said I will go last because I'm horrible.
I guess sleep, taking care of yourself, taking care of your body, but really sleep is so important. I personally think that is really helpful for me with burnout. And gratitudes I'd mentioned before, really kind of uplifting voices. There's more to social justice than just recognizing the pain and the suffering. There are things worth celebrating as well and embracing. So doing that kind of work too can be really, really helpful. I think, we've kind of mentioned moments of seeing resilience or seeing something happen or seeing results, and really kind of taking a moment to take that in as much as you possibly can, and celebrating those moments. For me, listening to music really helps. Doing whatever kind of self-care, for me, spending time with my pet as well. Yeah, spending time with my cat really, really helps. And just practicing mindfulness and being in the moment can really help with burnout as well.
Yeah. I we all see a lot and deal with a lot, especially in our jobs. I make sure to set morning time. Like, I have a schedule in the morning of like a little meditation, gratitudes, Irene, kind of just checking in with myself to set myself up for the day. And then at night, like, I have a very specific routine as well. And to me, that's a form of self-care, creating that structure and control, because especially in our job, like, we're at a crisis center, there's no control. And so kind of feeling like you have that control over your self-care can be really empowering. And then something else I really love to do is, we're going to get real personal here. I love to allow myself at least one night or one day a week of just allowing myself to do me. And normally that means nerding out with a bunch of snacks and watching Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings, and just letting my whole brain just decompress and take me to a whole other world. But I also think knowing your boundaries and limitations and kind of your red flags of approaching burnout is also important, because I think we've all gotten real close or have gone through like bouts of burnout, and it's hard to come back from that. And so I guess if you're able to, request a mental health day off. Like, just, if you can, just take a day to completely decompress and maybe unplug from everything, just to kind of get you back to you.
Yeah, the first thing I was going to bring up was boundaries. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because I feel like that's like genuinely so important. Because again, since we do have influence, and since, I know with my family, all they want to do is ask questions. And so sometimes being like, hey, I just need some time. Like, let me just go. And like, I also have a routine, like when I get home. So like, let me just go do this, this, and this, then we can come back and talk. Definitely setting boundaries. I know my thing is, I am such a planner. Like, I like to literally have my day, like from the hour I wake up to the hour I go to bed, including my weekends, next year, next 5 years, next 10 years, like answer. So for me, and I also love to travel. So genuinely, whenever I start feeling burnout, Andrew always knows, that's my husband, Andrew. He always knows when I'm starting to feel burnt out, because I'll be like, can we go somewhere? Like, even if it's just to like Arkansas or Austin or whatever it is, I'm like, can we go somewhere? And he'll be like, okay, so you're done. I was like, yes. Like, can we just go? And then he'll let me plan literally from the moment we step foot at this place to the moment we leave. And I feel like for me, that just gives me some control, and it gives me something to look forward to. And again, it's just nice to get away. So Danielle, I saw that you got excited. So
Yes, I feel that. Like, every single time I start feeling burnout, I'm like, honey, we need to go somewhere. We need, like, I can't be here anymore. I need to be somewhere else. And he's like, well, we can't run away from our problems. Like, everything's gonna be there when you get back. And I'm like, that's not the point. It's like, I never feel like as truly like tranquil, relaxed as I do whenever I'm on vacation. And it's because I'm unplugged and separated from work and all the stresses that come with normal daily life, like oil changes or something. And get to just like be you, your partner, and just being happy out and on the beach or wherever. And it's like, that's like my happy place. So whenever I'm like home and I'm trying to avoid burnout, I just generally like to plan for times where I'm going to be far away from here. And so it's like, let's have our 5-year plan. Let's start planning every aspect of our life. That way I feel like control of something. But
Mhm.
yes, I like that. So lastly, as we close, so what are some advice that we have for beginning activists? So people who are wanting to get into this work, who are wanting to use their voice to invoke change, what are some, like, one piece of advice you would give to yourself whenever you were first going to get into this work? What's something you would want your past self to know before entering into this work?
I think it would be to love yourself through the process, because you are going to learn and grow a lot as you are trying to influence the community.
That's fun.
Yeah, I would want to say something pretty similar to that. Yeah, just really recognizing that this is something that you're going to continue to grow, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to humble yourself, and so then you'll learn some more, and then you'll make more mistakes, and then you'll humble yourself again, and that's just kind of how it works. And it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Pace yourself, and yeah.
I mean, mine's kind of short and sweet. Like, just don't be scared to ask questions. Don't be scared to do research. I know for me, like, just now getting involved in this world, like, I've always had a passion for it, but like, even sometimes it can be kind of scary asking hard questions. So just don't be scared to ask questions. Know that people are here to support you.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
sorry. I was gonna say, find your people.
Yeah.
Find your people, find your support system, your community, because a part of this is really you can't do this alone. It's gonna take everybody. We have to lean on each other for this, and find those that you can really truly lean on and learn how to ask for help. Yeah.
Mine was just gonna be, you can't save the world overnight. Like,
Mm.
it's a slow and steady process of breaking down little pieces of the puzzle, and you put it all together, and one day you'll look up and you'll be like, wow, look at all of this. But it's not an overnight process. And I think that that's something that when you're gung-ho and you're ready and you're like young, you're like, I'm gonna change it all by Thursday, and it's like, oop, you're not going to do that. It's okay. It's slow and steady, and you just keep going, and you keep persevering, and you keep pushing, and all's well that ends well, Yeah. But with that being said, I'm so happy that each of you came and had so many insightful, informative things to say about advocacy and what it looks like for you. If this is your first education presentation that you've signed on to, all of our presentations are recorded in the videos below. And also make sure to give this video a like and a comment and a share. Share this video with at least 10 friends. We do presentations every Thursday at 10 a.m. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.